WTHA, your news leader, is proud to present Hispanic Heritage, showcasing the histories, cultures, and contributions of Hispanic Americans. Now, here are your hosts, Amanda Kenny and Matt Alvarez.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month.
Hispanic Heritage Month is a time to celebrate communities rich with culture, influencing the people we meet, the food we enjoy, and art spanning the globe.
We'll have all of that today, including a story of perseverance from our own backyard. But first, what does it mean to celebrate Hispanic culture? That's the question one Central Texas woman asked in an effort to uncover her family tree and discovered they were actually a part of her county's history. That's right. Tahara Rahman reports how the discovery led her to preserve other untold stories.
This is all part of Gina Rogers' family history.
This is one of his sons, Felipe.
That she didn't know about until a few years ago.
And when my dad passed away, I asked the question, where was Daddy born?
One question that would guide her next 5 years.
It was not much long after that tons of documents and records surfaced. This is the first deed.
Her great-great-grandfather, Victoriano Alba, bought 160 acres in Dripping Springs in 1903, becoming one of the first Hispanic families in the area.
They were some of the first persons who helped to create the St. Martin's de Porres Catholic Church in Dripping Springs. They had donated land for a school.
John McKiernan Gonzalez has been studying Southwest history for 25 years. He says more interesting than the Alba family's early roots is their persistence.
It's a really interesting interplay between a family story and a place's story.
Gonzalez says some Texas towns didn't want Black or Hispanic families as neighbors. Many of them were driven out by increasing property taxes. Sometimes, he says, these families of color were even driven out by terror.
Records that say that sort of like sheriff offices and real estate investors said it's cheaper to buy from the widow than from the man. So the connection between terror and land dispossession.
Still, the Alba Ranch remained in the family for more than a century. At one point, the Albas owned about 1,000 acres. It's all become more than family history. In January, the Texas Historical Commission approved the Alba Ranch as an undertold story. That means it fills a gap in state history.
A lot of Tejano families are tired of not seeing themselves in the story of Texas. It's about time to sort of like get the kind of public memory and public recognition that the work the families put into being in Hays County.
They were not even a footnote in history. That's really the reality of it.
Now on the Hays County Historical Commission herself, Rogers is working on more marker applications to make sure other Hispanic people, families, and places don't vanish once they're gone.
Rediscovered him, and he won't be lost again.
Now, many other Hispanic communities around the country are doing their part to ensure their heritage isn't lost to time, including in Oklahoma. Friars of the Carmelite Order, ousted by the Mexican Revolution, arrived in Oklahoma City a century ago, hoping to rebuild in America, with the need for Spanish-speaking clergy in an area flooded with immigrants. They built Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Teresa, nicknamed the Little Flower. Despite their exile and threats from the KKK to burn the church down, the chapel thrived.
We were the first ones really to minister, and this is the church for the Hispanics from the very beginning.
Little Flower remains as the oldest Hispanic parish in Oklahoma, and today one of 44 churches with a mass in Spanish. The Oklahoma City Diocese is now 54% Hispanic.
And Tampa, Florida is paying tribute to another unique tradition that helped local workers stay informed by building a museum featuring the El Lector.
Tú que imitaste la llorosa vida que tuve.
In cigar factories during the early 1900s, the El Lector would read the daily newspaper and popular literature aloud to workers whose minds would often drift while rolling hundreds of cigars. He'd earn up to $0.25 a day from each of them and leave a lasting impact beyond the typical workday.
You had to be well read, you had to be able to be very dramatic, and you had to know what you were doing, and you had to really be a bit of a lobbyist.
Lectors weren't left without controversy. The reading of left-leaning articles angered some factory owners. Between that and the introduction of machinery, the Lector was gone by the 1930s. The museum is being built by the J.C. Newman Cigar Company, which aims to preserve the rich history of cigar rolling.
The Hispanic population in the United States is growing.
And for the millions living in our nation, keeping to their traditions of their home country is a priority.
That's right, but it can be a challenge, especially when growing up in two different cultures.
How do you say your name? Marilyn or Marilyn?
So it's in Spanish, it's Marilyn, but here everyone just reads it Marilyn.
Are you okay with that? Is that how you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm used to it now, and like I like it, so it's okay. I like it both ways.
Marilyn was 10 years old when she and her family moved from Venezuela to Missouri. Without knowing proficient English, she struggled to understand anyone around her, including her teachers. But after living in America, Marilyn says experiencing both cultures actually helped her keep to her roots while growing from new experiences.
I'm always grateful that I get to know both languages and cultures.
The Census Bureau estimates there were roughly 60.6 million people who identify as Hispanic in the country as of 2019, making up 18% of the total population. And we have so much more for you in store today, including a look at how communities are breaking barriers to make sure no one is left behind.
And dishing out delicacies sure to make your mouth water. We'll hear from restaurant owners and entrepreneurs, including one in our own backyard.